Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 739. April the 1st, 2019, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, no real April Fool's Day stuff for you today, but a hell of a good video for you because today we are actually going to get to look at the direct link between the rotten Reverend Clinton and the 2016 coup plot and direct link to her collusion with the foreign government. Thanks to the excellent reporting of John Solomon. That will take up most of today's video. A couple things I'll get out of the way first. First of all, Monday, today, I'm going to be going to on a little business venture for my company. It's in state, but I might not get back till pretty late, so I don't know if it'll be a Tuesday video or not. Hopefully I'll get back in time Monday evening to do the video for Tuesday, but if something should happen and there's no Tuesday TowerGate video, it's simply because I didn't get back to town early enough to get it done. But at this time, I think it should be okay. But for that reason, I want to go ahead and get Dumbass of the Week voting done on this video. So on this video, put in your vote for Dumbass of the Week. And of course, we have some great candidates. I mean, we have the entire Democratic the entire Senate on the Democrat side voting not one single vote for the Green New Deal. And then, of course, you've got Cortez, who's probably almost a shoo-in this week as a result of the fact that after her Green No Deal failed, her Green New Deal failed and didn't get a single vote, even from a Democrat, she blamed Republicans for pulling off some sort of a stunt. After her bill got voted down and even not a single Democrat voted for it. She calls that a stunt. Okay, well, it was her damn bill. Okay, and we have, of course, what's going on with creepy Joe Biden. We have various other characters out there. The pencil neck Adam Schiff. We have the whole 9 yards. So should be a pretty good Dumbass of the Week voting this week. And so go ahead and get your votes in for Dumbass of the Week on this video. In the comment section of this video is where I'll be going to tally the votes. Okay, so now let's get to a couple things just from Sunday morning. So we had Jake Tapper, Jake Tapper on his show on CNN on Sunday morning, telling Mick Mulvaney that CNN didn't get anything wrong in the Russiagate reporting. They didn't get anything wrong in the Russiagate reporting, CNN. The fact is, they didn't get anything right. They have spent the last 2 years telling us that Trump and Trump Jr. and the whole 9 yards are all going to be indicted. He's going to be impeached, the whole 9 yards. That's all they talked about for 2 straight years. And now Tapper has the gall to tell Mulvaney that, no, we didn't get anything wrong here at CNN. No, we didn't get anything wrong at all on Russiagate. These people are in denial. They're delusional. I mean, the fact of the matter is their audience doesn't agree because we know that their audience boogied. 500,000 of them left CNN on Monday and Tuesday, and they've stayed gone. Their numbers for the entire week were down substantially, and those viewers seem to have gone over to Fox. So clearly, the viewers, about 500,000 of them or more, do not agree with Jake Tapper. Now, that's just CNN. MSNBC also saw viewers leave. So, and you can imagine how many of these left-wing so-called news sites, what's happened to their viewership. I'm sure it's dropped as well. No, Jake, you got everything wrong on Russiagate, along with your friends, and you're going to pay a heavy price for it, and you should. So we had Lindsey Graham on Marie Bartiromo. Didn't really hear anything new from Lindsey Graham. Bartiromo certainly pressed him. She's definitely holding his feet to the fire, and she did ask him why the delay, because he's been talking about having these hearings and stuff, and he says he wants to wait for the Mueller report to be released so that the Mueller report thing is out of the way completely. And so we can expect that that's going to happen in about 2 weeks. So Lindsey said that he expects certainly sometime after the middle of April to begin calling in witnesses, because he said he's going to do the deep dive on the Clinton email investigation. He's going to do a deep dive on the FBI not informing Trump that they suspected that there may be Russians trying to infiltrate his campaign. He wants to know why they didn't tell him that. He is also going to be targeting the dossier and trying to get to the bottom of who put that together. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious who put that together. I think it's Glenn Simpson was the primary author of that, with a little bit of help from Mr. Baumgartner. And of course, now we're learning that there was a lot of the information that Simpson was getting was coming from Ukraine. And I think that'll be the biggest thing to come out of it. And also, he's going to drill down on the FISA. And of course, it is the FISA warrant that if there's anything in this scandal, and there's a lot of things, but if there's anything in this scandal that is a slam dunk that people are definitely going to be indicted for, it's the FISA stuff. Because they flat out lied to the FISA court. This is clear. There's no, you can't question that. We know enough about what they told the FISA court to know that they simply were not straight with the FISA court. They lied to them, period, straight up. And there will have to be punishment for that. Otherwise, if there's not, then you're going to have an awful lot of representatives who are simply not going to vote to reauthorize FISA. And so if they want to save FISA, somebody's going to have to pay a price. Some heads are going to have to roll if they want to save FISA. And, oh, by the way, we've been wondering why Lindsey Graham is so up in the bit on this and why he seems to be coming our way and being a lot better than we knew him to be in the past. It might have something to do with the fact that Lindsey Graham is up for re-election in 2020, and Trump is very popular in South Carolina. You think maybe that has something to do with why Lindsey suddenly has gotten so close to Trump and is playing the role he's now playing? I think it has everything to do with it. Yep, that's okay. I don't care what's motivating Lindsey as long as he takes care of business. We'll see if he does. But he's also still pushing for the special counsel. And that's, I think, what his goal is to look into all these things, gather up all this evidence, put it with the evidence from the previous investigations in the previous Congress, from Nunes Committee and the Oversight Committee, and then to take all that and go to Barr and say, okay, here's so much freaking evidence, it's overwhelming. We need a special counsel. And of course, Barr probably wouldn't appoint a special counsel until after the Mueller thing is completely wrapped up. So I think that's what everybody's watching to see exactly how this is handled. It's not an issue anymore of whether or not it's going to be handled in some way. It has to be dealt with in some way. They can't just ignore it and say, well, we're just going to move on. No, they're not going to be able to move on. It's too big a story. So we'll have to see exactly how they try to deal with this and how they try to salvage the FBI and the intel community and the DOJ and foreign governments. We're going to have to see how they try to salvage all that and still meet the demand of the public who wants to know the truth. And of course, they're going to have to figure out exactly who and how they're going to punish the perps. And that's what this upcoming year of 2019 is largely going to be dealing with. The unraveling of the lie and accountability for those who perpetrated the lie. I think that that's what 2019, that's the story for 2019. Now, so now we're starting to see people again going back because of where we are in the story. And a lot of people now are going back and re-examining that interview that Clapper did with CNN. Where, if you remember, because a lot of people are asking the question, what did Obama know and when did he know it? Now you have Rand Paul. He's going directly for the jugular. He wants an immediate investigation of Obama, his people in his administration, particularly around him, and he wants their communications and all these things. So Rand Paul wants to jump, quite a ways ahead of the investigation and jump right into where he thinks the root of the problem is with Obama himself. And it's really the first time that I can remember that there's really been a real focus on Obama himself. But that seems to be where things are turning, especially with Rand Paul. So based on that, everybody is now going back and looking at that video again with Clapper, where he was on with Jake Tapper. And he told Tapper on CNN that that Obama essentially ordered the Trump-Russia investigation. And Clapper goes on to explain how that went. And he basically says that Obama said, yeah, we need to get this intelligence report and we need to get this information and then we need to act on it, basically. And so Clapper is basically sitting back saying, hey, this whole Trump-Russia investigation, we would not have been able to do this without Obama making it clear that he wanted this investigated. So now everybody's going back and looking at that video where clearly Clapper is pinning it on Obama. That Obama is the one that wanted this investigation to occur. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But Clapper's got a lot of problems, to be honest with you. He, like Comey and like Brennan, all three of them have made multiple statements of fact, which don't jive with one another. I mean, their own explanations have changed, not just between each other, but their own personal opinions and statements that they've made do not match up with themselves. So they have big issues with themselves, not to mention all the problems they have that their statements don't match up with the other guys. So, obviously they have lied. The question is any of the lies that they told, are any one of them a truth, or are there any truths at all? Or has everything they've said it's just different lies? So, I mean, we have Clapper saying that, oh yeah, the dossier was definitely part of the IC briefing. Brennan saying no, it wasn't. In fact, he didn't see it till December. You have Comey, who basically says it was a mosaic. I mean, somebody's going to have to come clean. And at this point, they've all made statements under oath that simply do not wash with the facts. And that's the problems that they have. It's just not what they did. It's the fact that they've lied about what they did. Yes, that crazy noise you hear is still coming from my fireplace. I don't know what I got going on back here. Shut the hell up while I'm doing my video. You crazy ass. I think what happens sometimes, I get a cat chasing a bird across my roof because I have a tree that hangs out. Sometimes it's a squirrel. Cat chasing a squirrel or a bird. They get down in the flue of my chimney here, and then they fall down into my chimney. So eventually I smell something bad, and I realize I got a dead animal in my fireplace, not to drag it out of there. Alrighty, so let's see. Yes. Now I'm going to spend the rest of the video on some just unbelievable reporting by John Solomon. And of course, I've pointed out many circumstantial or coincidental examples of the Rotten Reverend Clinton being tied to being the person directly responsible for planning, organizing, directing, and controlling the Trump-Russia collusion delusion. And while the Rotten Reverend Clinton does a pretty good job of disguising her activities by using intermediaries and others, John Solomon, what he has turned up is actual hardcore direct evidence of the Rotten Reverend Clinton being the one behind the Trump-Russia collusion delusion. And this is based on an article that he wrote on Thursday, which appeared, I don't think it was in The Hill, I think it was on another site actually. It's an article that he wrote on Thursday mixed with a radio interview that he did with Sean Hannity on Friday. So it's from these two sources that I'm going to go through this and point out all the things that John Solomon reveals. And I got to tell you, John Solomon, he absolutely deserves a Pulitzer Prize already. But I have no doubt that when this scandal has finally played itself out and the smoke is cleared and everybody understands what happened here, that John Solomon certainly deserves a Pulitzer Prize for the work that he has done. And we've covered a lot of good reporters here. Lee Smith has done a great job. A lot of reporters have done a great job that we talk about here, but probably no one stands out like John Solomon. He seems to always be ahead of the curve. I know he's got great sources in the intelligence community and various other things. I mean, he says on Sean Hannity's show that actually very early on in this investigation, when it was still in its infancy back in the late fall of 2016, he actually was visited by two intelligence officers who know him, and they came by and they said, "Hey man, we can't give you any information. We just want to tell you that what you're digging into right now, you're on the right track. Keep digging." Because essentially, in general, our intelligence agency was used to try to overturn an election. You're on the right track. Keep digging. Can't give you any details. Just want to let you know you're digging in the right spot. That was his experience way back in late 2016. And that's why Solomon has been continued to have his nose to the grindstone and work this story. But he is really the only one right now, or the first one, I should say, that's really unearthed the Ukrainian part of this, which, if you go to my timeline and look, you'll see the very first entry, or second entry on my timeline, is dealing with the activities of Alexandra Chalupa back in 2014. And if you follow the story through to its conclusion, that's where we find out that is really where the Trump-Russia collusion narrative was born. And who was she working for? The DNC, as a private contractor. So in this particular reporting, John Solomon actually finds the direct connection from Hillary herself to the Ukrainian connection. So let's go through this. Keep your ears peeled, because some of this is going to blow your mind. So, this NABU, which is like the Ukraine's version of the FBI, the NABU leaked, and keep in mind, we learned that the FBI set up an office in the Ukrainian embassy to work with this NABU. Keep that in mind. The FBI is working with the NABU. They're both essentially investigative agencies of the government. High-level people at the very top of both agencies working together to conjure up this Trump-Russia collusion. So with that in mind, keep this in mind, the NABU leaked documents to the American media, including Michael Isikoff and Glenn Simpson. The court in the Ukraine found that the NABU did interfere in the 2016 U.S. election to help Hillary. This is a fact, okay? The court hearing happened, the determination was made, and Mr. Lyshenko, of course, was convicted. There are 2 more individuals who are likely going to be charged probably within the next couple of days, if not weeks, and there'll likely be at least 3 convictions and possibly more. It could end up being the same scandal. Remember, this is like the Ukraine's version of the FBI. The same type of house cleaning that's probably going to happen here and has been happening with the top tier of our FBI is happening and will continue to happen there. So it's mostly these 2 main federal bureaus of investigation, both in Ukraine and the FBI, that were deeply involved in working together on this, and both are seeing massive unravelings as a result. In the spring of 2017, listen very closely. In the spring of 2017, the rotten Reverend Clinton had a full-time researcher. No, this is spring of 2016. I'm sorry. Spring of 2016. The rotten Reverend Clinton had a full-time researcher at the Ukrainian embassy in Washington. The rotten Reverend Clinton set up a receiving post to get dirt on Trump. Not just the DNC, not Confusion GPS, not Perkins Coie, none of her intermediaries, but she personally set up this situation. Now, where is this coming from? Well, John Solomon, in his interview with Sean Hannity, dropped this story, dropped this information about the Politico magazine, Politico, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with Politico. They're, of course, a left-wing, pro-Hillary, anti-Trump news site, so-called news site, fake news site, and they actually wrote this story. Many of the things that I'm about to tell you actually came from this Politico article, which was written in 2017. And in fact, it was written January the 11th, 2017. A lot of this stuff is from what I'm going to tell you now, which John Solomon uncovered, is from a Politico article written in January and published on January the 11th, 2017. Okay, so the most important of which is this first item, which shows that in the spring of 2016, the rotten Reverend Clinton had a full-time researcher working at the Ukrainian embassy in Washington, and this person had been set up as kind of a, within the embassy, to set up a receiving post to get the dirt on Trump. So in this article, of course, it's written on January 11th, 2017. This is post-Trump winning the election. And so this is the viewpoint of Politico, is writing this story in the post-Trump winning the election period, January the 11th. not too long after he won the election. And in this article, they state that Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfired. And this, in fact, is the name of the article. And you can read it for yourself. You can go Google Politico article, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. And you'll find that article from January 11th, 2017, written by Kenneth Vogel and David Stern. So, a lot of the sources for this Russia collusion delusion narrative coming out of Ukraine and coming out of the intelligence community, the two primary drivers of it were Clapper and Alexandria Chalupa. Keep that in mind, because you're getting both sides of it here. The DNC side, which is Chalupa, and you're getting the intelligence community side of it, which is Clapper. Remember, he's the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. Anytime, he said in his own words, anytime a FISA is taken out on somebody, he knows about it. Keep that in mind. Now, here is an exact quote from this article. Ukrainian officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They also disseminated documents implicating Manafort and helped Hillary Clinton's allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors. A Ukrainian-American operative, Alexandria Chalupa, met with top officials in the Ukraine embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump and Paul Manafort and Russia. Now get this next line. Directly from, this is word for word, directly from this Political article. Get this. The very next paragraph, after you get that, you go, wow, that sounds really damning, doesn't it? Guess what Politico does next? Then they drop this on you. But they were far less concerned or centrally directed, but they were far less concerted or certainly directed than Russia's alleged hacking and dissemination of documents and democratic emails. Russia's effort was personally directed by Putin, according to U.S. intelligence official James Clapper. So they give you this entire paragraph where they tell you how Hillary Clinton and the intel community is working directly with Ukrainian officials. They have this entire back channel set up. They're sharing information or sharing documents or with the media, the whole 9 yards. Politico is telling you this and you're going, wow, man, this is very, very bad. And then they follow right up in the very next paragraph and say, but it really wasn't all that bad because it was much worse with the Russians because the Russians, it was actually Putin involved. As if Poroshenko wasn't involved in this, but he was. So this is just how the Politico, I imagine, are sitting there and they write that whole paragraph and tell you exactly what happened and they go, oh my God, that's horrible. Well, we got to do something about that. Let's just essentially back that off by saying, but what all I just told you about what the rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC and the Ukrainian officials and all the rest, what they were all doing, oh, it wasn't all that bad. Because what the Russians were doing was much worse. And it was directed by Putin. Now they've been proven wrong. Chalupa told Politico that she had developed a network of sources in Kiev and Washington, including journalists, government officials, and private intelligence operatives. That's what Chalupa told Politico. Chalupa also said that she shared her findings with officials from the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign. Chalupa told the DNC that there was a Trump-Russia connection, and if there was, then we can expect Manafort to be involved in this election. And so she goes to them in January of 2016, and Chalupa tells them that she's sure that Manafort's involved in some sort of a collusion with Russia. And if we find out that Manafort ends up being in the Trump campaign, then we'll know for sure. This is what she told them, the DNC, in January of 2016. Keep in mind that Manafort was brought in roughly 2 months later in March of 2016. Chalupa shared information with the Ukrainian ambassador in D.C., whose name is Valery Chaly, C-H-A-L-Y. Chaly was really running this at the top, But once Trump won the election, now she's kind of changed her tune and is pretending she had nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, there's too many people who know better, and so she is likely to come into the crosshairs when they start handing down indictments in the Ukraine. Ms. Chalet is probably in some deep trouble. The DNC, the Democratic National Committee, encouraged Chalupa to keep getting information. Remember, she worked at the DNC. And then, somewhere around July of 2016, she left the DNC as an employee and went to Ukraine and then began working as a private contractor for the DNC. Still working for them, but instead of being as an employee, she was now working as a private contractor. Chalupa said the embassy also worked directly with reporters researching Trump and Manafort ties to Russia. Then we have this character, Andrei Telezinko, who worked as a political officer in the Ukraine embassy, and he helped Chalupa research connections between Trump, Manafort, and Russia. He was the number 2 man at the Ukrainian embassy, working for Chalet. Chalet was his boss. They were coordinating an investigation with the Hillary team. Telezinko worked as a political officer in the Ukraine embassy and helped Chalupa research connections between Trump, Manafort, and Russia. They were coordinating an investigation with the Hillary team on Manafort, according to Telezinko. They were trying to keep it very quiet. I'll bet they were. Chalupa told Telezinko that if we can get enough evidence on Manafort or Trump's involvement with Russia, she can get a hearing in Congress by September. Who is she referring to? Well, Chalupa is talking to Telezinko, saying, hey, if you can get me enough evidence on Manafort or Trump's involvement with Russia, I can get a hearing in Congress by September. In other words, before the election. And when she says that she can get that done, she's obviously not even in the Congress. She's working at that time as a private contractor for the DNC. What she means is she can get this information to Hillary and the DNC, and they can use that to get the Democrats in Congress to begin having hearings, which they tried to do. But guess what happens? Chalupa discussed hearings with Marcy Kaptur, Democrat, who I think is from Ohio. Marcy Kaptur, the Democrat. Chalupa goes to her and says, hey, we got this information. We need to get some hearings going. Now, this happened right after the dirt that they dropped ended up resulting in Manafort being fired. But the hearings never went anywhere. Kaptur's aide said that it was, quote, a touchy subject. Yeah, of course. They knew that if they brought it into Congress and had hearings on it, that there would be Republicans on that committee too, and they would start asking a lot of questions, and pretty soon they would find out about the collusion that was going on between Democrats, the FBI, the intelligence community, and the government of Poroshenko, as well as obviously Chalupa's role and the ambassador's role, both in the UK, the Ukrainian embassy, and in the US embassy. Ukrainian officials also met with Republicans. Now, I'm wondering if one of those is David Kramer and Senator Magoo, because we know that Kramer went over to the Ukraine and got hooked up with the same propaganda organization that Chalupa was working for. And that's probably has maybe one of the Republicans, but there were others. Chalupa was working with Michael Isikoff personally. Chalupa was one feeding Michael Isikoff at Yahoo News, and she put him in contact with other Ukrainian officials. Chalupa was, as I said earlier, a paid consultant by the DNC after she left their employment back in early midsummer of 2016. Chalupa, according to this interview she gave to Politico, says that her findings were largely kept out of the dossiers. Not the dossier, the dossiers, as in plural. So Chalupa's findings were largely kept out of the dossier. Why do you think that would be? Well, because if she put the findings into the dossier, it would expose that most of this stuff came from Ukraine and not Russia. And they would find out how this all came to be. And they would see all the collusion that went on between the FBI, the intel community, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, the media, and everyone else in Ukraine. And their entire Trump-Russia fiasco would be over because it would now turn into a Democrat Hillary-Ukraine collusion event, which would be something totally different. They had to hide the whole Ukrainian stuff, couldn't put that in a dossier, couldn't use it for the FISA warrants, couldn't use it in the dossier because it would expose what they were up to. Now, the FBI did interview Chalupa and examined her laptop and her smartphone. And we know that because of Michael Isikoff. And this occurred in late August or early September. So the FBI knows all about Chalupa, knows all about all the stuff that was going on. They got it all. They knew it all, and they never said a word about it. Not in the dossier, not in the FISA warrant, not in any hearings. They've never talked about it. It's been completely erased from the record because they can't bring it into play. It would have helped them a lot. They could have used that to get a FISA. They could have used that to get all these things, but they couldn't. Couldn't use it because they were involved in procuring it, along with the rotten Reverend Clinton. Both of Chalupa's vehicles were broken into at about the same time that these stories are breaking in late September. Nothing was ever taken. The cars were just ransacked. Sounds a lot like Seth Rich. A woman also tried to break into Chalupa's home at about the same time in mid-late September. Russia was the suspect. Chalupa says she also received death threats, but that she wasn't scared off. The FBI was working with Ukrainian officials investigating Manafort. Of course they were. We know that Comey set up an FBI branch within the embassy. The Clinton campaign seized on the story and to advance Democrats' argument that Trump's campaign was closely linked to Russia. Robbie Mook made a statement regarding the Trump-Russia story at this time. This is the story that Michael Isikoff first broke, and as soon as he broke the story, Hillary and Mook commented within like 1 minute of him doing the story. Podesta actually commented almost an hour before the story even broke. So they knew it was coming in the pipeline. Poroshenko, who's now the president of Ukraine, who was the Hillary Clinton puppet, who was aware of the plot, met with Hillary Clinton in September at the UN General Assembly. So here we are at the end of September, with this whole thing going on. Poroshenko, who knows all about everything that's going on, probably one of the people directing it, meets with Hillary at the UN General Assembly. That was in late September. Ted Cruz was given the info on Trump as well by the Ukrainian officials. So once it got down to just Trump and Cruz, and they were trying to take out Trump, they went to Cruz and they tried to drop this Ukrainian stuff on him. Obviously, he checked it out and decided not to use it because he never did. After the election, Poroshenko's government tried to warm up relations with the Trump team. And the Trump team basically has been giving them the cold shoulder. For a very long time, they did. Now, Trump finally did meet with Poroshenko. And after he met with Poroshenko is when we started learning about all of this. So my guess is Trump sat down with Poroshenko and said, I've been giving you the cold shoulder for over a year now because I know what you did. I know what you did. And if you want to have any type of relations with me at all, you want anything from me at all, you better make sure that what you folks did to me comes out. I think that that's exactly what happened. So there you go. The rotten Reverend Clinton. The rotten Reverend Clinton's direct involvement in the plot to create the Trump-Russia narrative, where it was passed off through the intel community, who was also involved, the FBI also involved. It all happened, it all began, the Trump-Russia narrative all began at the end of 2014, went into 2015, and the rotten Reverend Clinton was up to her eyeballs in directing every single bit of it. Thank you, John Solomon. Thank you, John Solomon. When this becomes known to the world, the rotten Reverend Clinton and a lot of her friends are definitely looking at jail time. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.